Hello. I
Hi.
think it's 8, so we can begin. So welcome everybody. It's my pleasure to begin our webinar with our own experts from the Hebrew University. The lecture will last for about half an hour, and then you are welcome to ask questions by raising your digital hand or writing in the question and answer box. Tomorrow, you will receive the recording of the webinar by mail, together with the schedule of the next Hebrew University's webinars that will take place in June. And now, Chedva Weiss, the Administrative Director of the Revivim Honors Teacher-Training Program in Jewish Studies in the Hebrew University's Faculties of Humanities, will introduce our lecturer, Shuvi Hoffman. Chedva, please.
Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are, to all of our participants. My name is Chedva Weiss, and as Mara just said, I'm the Administrative Director of the Revivim program in the Hebrew University's Faculty of Humanities. Unfortunately, our academic director, Dr. Ronnie Goldstein, can't join us tonight because he's teaching right now, but I will be happy to fill in for him. Revivim trains gifted young Israelis to become teachers of Jewish studies subjects in the Israeli secular public school system. Our students are committed to becoming educators who, through a pluralistic approach, will encourage their students in the Israeli public school system to understand Jewish texts, familiarize themselves with Jewish heritage, ask questions, discuss and debate issues that arise from the text, and continue the tradition of Jewish learning and discourse. We are delighted to see that so many participants today, and are especially honored to have several significant Revivim donors with us tonight. Revivim could not exist without our generous and dedicated donors. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Shuvi Hoffman to you. Shuvi is a pedagogic mentor of the 4th year Revivim students this year. She is a graduate of Revivim's 2nd cohort and aims to inspire and train her Revivim students to become highly skilled teachers who will contribute to strengthening the Jewish identity of Israeli youth. Shuvi, welcome, and please, you're welcome to begin.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. I can't see you, but I guess you can see me, and I'm happy that you joined us today. So like Chedva said, I'm both an alum of the program and I'm a mentor in the program currently. So I have a lot of insight about how the program actually, how it's experienced both as a learner and as a teacher. I'm going to share a screen with you to show you a little bit also about the statistics that have to do with Revivim and a little bit about the program itself. How it's built and what the process is that the students go through during their 4-year program in the university. So the Revivim program, like Chedva said, is really aimed towards Jewish studies in the secular school system in Israel. There was a feeling that in Israeli society, students don't connect so much to these topics of Jewish studies, especially in the secular school system. The feeling was that teachers maybe weren't really making it relevant enough, interesting, engaging. Students often felt that Tanakh or Jewish thought were topics that had nothing to do with their own personal identity. And even to the extent that you could hear people saying, oh, that belongs to the religious community, or only Orthodox Jews need to study those things. And the aim of Revivim and a few other programs that I think all started a few years after Rabin's assassination was that the feeling that in Israeli society, we really need to make more connections and more dialogue between the different groups of Israeli society. And that it's a shame that Judaism as a culture, as a religion, as scholarship, as something that's part of our history, will really only belong to specific sects or groups in Israeli and Jewish society at large. So during the program, basically, there's a group of usually 15 to 20 students who come to Hebrew University. They obviously need to get accepted to the program, not only on the basis of their grades, but also there's a thorough interview to meet these candidates and to really see that we're talking about people who are both gifted and intellectual and interested in really delving deep into academic studies for 4 very rigorous years of studies. But at the same time, people who are relatable, who will engage students in the best way, who really care about Israeli society and about connecting to teenagers in a relevant way and building their confidence and their identity during those formative years. So the 4-year program consists of a BA, an MA, and a teaching certificate. Most of the students in the program choose for their MA to specialize in a certain field in Judaic studies. Everyone gets a similar BA with a general overview of all the principles of Jewish thought, Tanakh, Bible studies, very basic, but a very wide variety of courses that really aim to give these students the deepest and really for them to come to the classroom really knowing the material academically in the best way they can. And then they all go on to choosing an MA where they can specialize in something that is a little bit more interesting to them. Some people decide to do, for instance, an MA in Talmud study or in Israeli literature or history. And then they go on to also teach those topics and those subjects in the high schools they go to afterwards. In order to allow these students to program, which is, I can say firsthand, is very intense and very rigorous. There is a stipend. The students get a full tuition scholarship, and they also get a stipend in order to make it easier for them to be committed to this program and to really not have to do much more than just coming to courses and really dedicating themselves to the program. And during, as of the 2nd year of the program, out of the 4, the students already start teaching at a certain capacity in the high schools of Jerusalem and the area. Basically, in any teacher training program today in Israel, there's an element of in-service practice, like for the students to get a feeling of what it would be like to be in a classroom. But from my experience and from everyone that I speak to in the field, there's really no comparison. The Revivim students really function as almost like a real teacher who's part of the system from really day one. In their 2nd year, they teach only for 2 hours, and then it goes up and they teach in smaller groups. But they are fully responsible for their group of students throughout the year from day one, meaning they're the ones who prepare the lessons, they deliver the lessons, they're in charge of anything that goes from grading to disciplinary issues, speaking to the parents, everything that teaching a classroom entails. And they're not shadowing a professional teacher who's really in charge of managing the classroom and the curriculum. Rather, they're in the classroom really teaching, preparing, and doing everything just like a teacher who's in the system. But the real advantage for Revivim students is that they have mentors like myself who really guide them during these years of teaching in the school system, meaning they get the experience hands-on in the field from their 2nd year throughout their 3rd and 4th year, and they become more and more independent, and they become more and more, they teach more and more hours and classrooms gradually, but they always have their mentors and their workshops, weekly workshops where they prepare materials together, they reflect on their teaching, they reflect on the curriculum They share situations, dilemmas, things that come up in the classroom in a way that really no other program gives such an intense mentorship program. And the truth is, principals who later on, when our graduates finish their program and are looking for jobs, principals always say, if I accept a Revivim graduate, I know I'm basically getting already a teacher and not a student who needs a lot of hand-holding in the beginning. Not to say that it's an easy transition to get into the system. It's not an easy transition in any case, and it's a lot of hard work to be a teacher. But I would say that the Revivim graduates come into it with the most experience possible, and really with a wider view on the system, how it works. They've already had experience in usually multiple grade age groups and multiple topics and subjects. So they definitely have an advantage. They are committed to teach for 4 full years after their graduation. So the program itself is 4 years, where they gain all their certificates, and they're committed to teach for 4 years in the public school system. So like I was saying before, the BA includes general Jewish studies and Bible. And for their second degree, for their MA, they can choose from a variety of topics that the Hebrew University offers. And the teaching certificate is in Bible and Jewish studies, which really allows for some flexibility coming into the school system, because Jewish studies includes a lot of other topics, and it makes it convenient also for the schools that they get accepted to, because we're talking about people who can probably teach not only 1, but 2, and sometimes 3 subjects in the school system. So this is a little bit of statistics and numbers. There are, in the current year, 73 students. And generally, the group, we said it was about 15 or 20 in each cohort. And there are 4 cohorts simultaneously learning in the program every year. It's usually about half-half, depending on the makeup of the group. And when we interview the candidates, we also make a point of having a variety of different backgrounds, if it be secular, traditional, and observant. There's always a mix of and a balance between different groups. I would say that the goal is to teach, like we said, in secular schools, but of course also people who come from a religious background or practice, who are observant of religious and affiliated with some religious movement, can also be accepted to Revivim. We don't only accept secular teachers, but we definitely make it very clear that we're looking for people who respect and value secular, Jewish secular identity, and think that they can contribute to that and reinforce that identity, and are not looking to maybe change their students' identity to something else. What's interesting is that Israeli society is very complex, and what's very interesting for a lot of Revivim graduates is to discover just how observant and traditional many of these so-called secular students are. And sometimes even a teacher who's wearing a kippah is confronted in these situations where he or she, let's say with a head covering, feels that they have a more liberal maybe point of view on a certain topic than their students. So in Israeli society, the fact that a child is in a secular school doesn't always mean what these children, what kind of homes they come from, or what kind of points of view they have. So it's a very, very interesting experience when you actually encounter the students. This is the slices of what people are doing, the graduates from all the cohorts up to date. There are, as you can see, many of the graduates who are principals, vice principals, and teachers in the system. We said only the commitment is only for 4 years of teaching, yet most of the graduates continue on teaching in some capacity or another, and some for full-time jobs, and like we see as principals and vice principals in the public school system many years after their commitment is officially over. Also, many of the graduates who are not in the public school system anymore, as you can see, that's the next size slice, still work in educational frameworks. And most of the graduates stay in some kind of framework that either touches upon Jewish education, or it could also be informal education. Some go on to doctorates and postdoctorates in an academic framework. But as you can see, the majority really is invested in the school system in Israel. So here you have a little bit of a different slicing of the data. And as the years go by, I can tell you from firsthand experiences, when I am trying to help my students who are soon to be graduates, because I'm the mentor of the 4th year. So they're really, it's their step out of Revivim and really into the system of the school system. As the years go by, I feel like more and more principals I'm in touch with to try to help them match and find some graduates from Revivim are either Revivim graduates themselves, or have a staff full of Revivim graduates in their Judaic study department, in Bible, Tanakh, in Jewish thought, in literature and history. And sometimes we get a lot of emails from our graduates saying, I'm now a principal of this in this school, in this place in the country. I would love for Revivim students and Revivim graduates to join my team. And it's really become a community. And this is the 20th year of Revivim. We're celebrating 20 years from the year 2000. And we really do feel the networking that this program has created for people who are looking for an experience of teaching, of meaningful teaching in the secular school system. And as I said before, it's not always an easy transition to come from studying in Hebrew U and then finding yourself in a school, in a classroom where you really have to deal with a lot of issues, and you want to engage the students, and you want the studying to be as rigorous and interesting and challenging as possible at the same time. There are a lot of challenges in the system. And many graduates feel that it's comforting and helpful to know that out there are other graduates who can help them, whether it be in the school itself that they're teaching, and if they're part of that faculty, or as people who can be there when they need to ask a question, get some guidance. People I know also from my experience, I would call my mentors years after I was already in the system and past Revivim. Supposedly, I would call up my mentors from the past, and I would say, let's get a cup of coffee, and I really need to talk to you about this and this topic, or this and this issue that I'm having in my classroom. And it's just great to know that you have that support. So these are the highlights, and soon I think we're going to open it up for some questions. So we have almost 200 graduates teaching in over 100 schools in many different locations in Israel. Naturally, many of the graduates stay in Jerusalem or live in the area. So there are definitely a lot of graduates who are in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem, but we have students sometimes in Eilat and in Mitzpe Ramon, and up north in obviously in Haifa and places like that, but even more northern than that. And it's really a pleasure to. I was actually the coordinator for the graduates last year, and it was a pleasure to be in touch with graduates from all over the country doing amazing things and really being involved in the system and contributing so much to so many different schools. Like we said, there are quite a few principals and vice principals who definitely have a significant impact on the system. And like we said, there are many who found themselves in other educational roles. So that's Revivim. I guess we're up for questions if you'd like to ask.
Thank you, Shuvi. So we have one question from the chat from Daniel Batirev. How is success of a teacher measured if change in student is not a goal?
That's an excellent question. I think as an educator, I can say that it's one of our challenges is to not assume that our job is to change the student, but rather to empower the student and enable them to grow as human beings and as learners. I think that the whole issue of how do you actually measure success in education is very, very complicated, and definitely in the humanities. I would say that in maths and science, it's so much easier to say, oh, they've achieved these and these grades, so obviously they're successful. And in the humanities, we're looking for something that's a little bit less tangible. We're looking for something that has to do with the way people think, the way people learn, the way people connect to their culture. And I think I would say that I'm sorry, having some a crisis at home. I would say that especially in Jewish studies, the goal really is to have people connect, and you can't measure that so well. Maybe years later, you'll meet your student, and this has happened to me multiple times, and they'll say, wow, we really remember Jewish philosophy class with you. We really were impacted by this and this Bible class, and thank you so much. So they didn't say that when they were in 9th grade or 7th grade. They only made trouble, but then when you meet them when they're 30 and they tell you that, I think that's one of the most amazing moments.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Rachel Cole. Does the program ever take international students?
Sorry, does the program what? I didn't hear that.
Does the program ever take international students?
No, this is a program that's really geared towards Israeli educators and the Israeli school system. I don't know if there was ever a plan to maybe branch out, but it really is rooted in the challenges of the Israeli school system and the secular school system in particular. So it's really that's the target audience for the program, and those are the students that we work with. Some of the graduates from Revivim later on, after their 4-year commitment, did go on to teach in places around the world. I myself spent 2 years as an emissary in New York, teaching Tanakh, teaching Bible, and teaching Hebrew, but that was only after many years of teaching in the Israeli system. The idea was really to nourish and build up some things in the Israeli school system that needed repair.
Okay, we have now a digital hand raised from Joseph Oscar. So I opened your microphone. Yossi, you can speak, yeah.
Yes. Good evening. I'm calling you from the northern part of Italy. I'm a graduate of the Nautical College of Acco, Xineam Acco, many years ago. Can you be more specific about when you say the Bible? Can you elaborate? The Bible is a huge book. Where do you start? Or when you talk about Hebrew literature, can you give a few examples and so forth?
Okay, so Bible studies in Israel are part of the mandatory topics that students have to learn from elementary school throughout high school. So there is a curriculum that we're committed to as Bible teachers in the system. what is chosen out of the Bible, which I agree is a very is a huge collection of books, and it's a good question. What do you teach in Bible? And I would also just add that although Israeli students are Hebrew speakers and the Bible is written in Hebrew, for them it's often a foreign language. They need a lot of skills and learning a lot of tools sometimes to actually read the text. Surprisingly, sometimes it's more challenging than someone who knows that it's a foreign language for them. And so I would say that, of course, in the Israeli school system, we cover the Torah, we cover most of the prophets, and then there's a selection of books that, again, aren't all studied in length. And I would say that in the secular school system, you get bits and pieces of certain books in the Bible. But I would say that the main idea in the secular school system, and maybe as opposed to the Orthodox schools, is really to rely on your understanding of the pshat, of the text itself, to know the historical background, to wrestle with the ideas, the philosophical ideas, to have the geographical, political background for the text, and not to rely heavily on commentary, even though it is part of the mandatory curriculum for high school, is to be familiar with some commentary and also with the actual idea of commentary, like why does Rashi feel the need to explain this or that? So there is an aspect, there's an element of commentary, but I would say that for the most part, the emphasis is on the story of the Jewish people from creation throughout through the fathers, the mothers, and slavery in Egypt. Like, there is some kind of narrative that the curriculum wants to give the students an idea of a story, and not with too many gaps in between, and a little, I would say, a little taste of some other kinds of books that are in the Bible. So the wisdom and some of the some of the other historical books later on in the Tanakh. Again, most of the emphasis is really on the history and the reality, the political and geographical reality in Israel and Judea in different times of history in the Bible.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Mary Simeon. Mary?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you so well.
Okay. Is it better there?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shuvi. My question is, have you integrated the distance education technologies in your program so that then anyone away from your institution is able to access the material? Thank you.
Okay, so if I heard correctly, you're asking if we are practicing some online learning lately and we've integrated it in our program? Yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so yes, definitely that has been the major challenge over the past few months. And we quickly adjusted because our students it's not foreign to them to use digital tools in teaching. I would say that often Revivim students, while they're doing their work, like I said, during their studies in the program, are already in the classrooms, and they tend to bring creative techniques and methods of learning, and especially aren't afraid to integrate digital tools also into their learning. Part of it is because they're young and enthusiastic, and they really want to connect to their students, and they realize that part of being relevant today is also using those tools. At the same time, for their students to gain appreciation of the ancient texts. So it's always a back and forth between the old and the new. But definitely over the past few months, it's been one of our main challenges to help the students teach online, to sort of utilize the tools that they have teaching on Zoom or in other ways online, talking a lot about how we develop independent learners, how we I would say, even take advantage of this crisis in order to learn about how to be teachers who can really give assignments to the students and challenge the students even from far away and even through the screen of their computer. So it's a lot about thinking about, I think it has been a very interesting experience because it really makes you appreciate what is the teacher's role today in the classroom, how much of the time and energy the teacher spends on whether it be discipline or really just mediating the material for the students and explaining it. And there's something about the online learning that really forces you to let the student be a little bit more dominant and independent. And I think that it's a great experience from that point of view.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Shuvi, we have a question from the question and answer box from Patricia Kleiman. Does any of the coursework for the public school students include reading from the Torah using Tikkun Korim, for example, and reading a portion of an upcoming parasha?
That's a good question. No, there's no mandatory part of any of the curriculum that deals with actually reading as, I would say, with a trup in a synagogue or as part of the parsha reading. At the same time, part of the curriculum is to be familiar with the actual punctuation in the text. So it's a very, I would say it's a very sensitive topic, how you relate or introduce Jewish ceremonies in the secular school system in Israel. I would definitely say that's one of the, I don't know if one of the biggest issues, but definitely one of the main issues of teachers who teach Jewish studies in secular schools, how sensitive you need to be about ritual and ceremony, because it isn't a religious school and the kids are not expected to pray, definitely not in the school environment. But like I said before, we discover that many of the kids who are in secular schools are actually very much connected to those aspects of Jewish culture. And as teachers, we need to be open to that as well. So sometimes it's very interesting, and it also depends on the class. So again, I would say that as Bible teachers, they're committed to teach their students what the meaning and the significance of the punctuation is, how to read it. But I would say that the majority of the teachers do not teach the actual tune or practice with the students to sing the psukim, to sing the parsha, or to practice in a way that we would say we can do that in a synagogue, during a ceremony or ritual. And it also, I would say it also depends on the school. There are certain schools that really find it important for children to be not only exposed and intellectually, but also experience those aspects of Jewish culture. So there could be a principal in a secular school, even though I would say we work with middle school and high school students. I would say that it's probably more common in elementary schools, where some principals think it is important for them to be, and we don't have to be afraid to expose them or to talk about the ritual aspect of Judaism. But again, as a whole, I would say for the most part, students and teachers do not have, don't necessarily have any time, space, or maybe not the will to touch upon those topics in the classroom.
Okay, there is another question from the chat from Mr. Lipper. If I understand well, he's asking if there is any difference in appreciation or connection to Judaism between students that have Revivim teachers or without Revivim teachers.
Okay, so that goes a little bit back to the question of how do we measure success? And I think that, first of all, the past few years, there have been several Revivim candidates who in the interview said, when we asked, so why Revivim? Why did you choose this program? If you want to be a teacher, why choose Revivim? And quite a few would say, well, I actually had a teacher who was from Revivim and they inspired me. And I always said, like, when I get a little older and I'm looking for a profession, that's what I want to do. So that, I think, speaks for itself. It's really it's a very nice thing to meet those candidates and to appreciate just how what a great impact the Revivim program had on their lives and even their career choice. I think in general, if you ask principals in the country, and we've had many talks, conversations, lectures from principals in different moments, and they always say that Revivim really has impacted the way Jewish studies are taught in the secular system. Again, I'm sure that there are places in the country where there are no Revivim graduates, and it's hard to know. But in places where Revivim graduates are in the faculty, involved in the school system, you really do see a difference. You see a creativity, you see enthusiasm. And it's not to say that there weren't also, and there still are, many excellent teachers out there. I mean, I can definitely say that one of the big challenges, I think, not only in Israel for teachers, is that it's not always a profession that's appreciated, and it's not always so simple to explain to someone just what an art it is to be a teacher in the classroom, and just how many skills and how much knowledge you need to teach any given class for 45 minutes during a stressful week, and really be there for your students on a personal level and an intellectual level, on an identity level. Like it is a complicated profession. So again, I think there are probably also statistics about just how many thousands and thousands of students have encountered Revivim teachers, Revivim graduates as teachers, or when they were students. And I think that as a whole, there's a positive vibe when it comes to that.
Thank you. We have a question I think maybe Chedva would like to answer. It's regarding the greatest founding needs for Revivim. Chedva, do you want to open your camera and answer to that?
I can open my camera too. I want to explain that Revivim is a program that is funded by donations that are earmarked for the program. All of our special programming, which includes our pedagogic mentors and teachers of special courses like Shuvi and her colleagues, are all funded by the program. In addition, every single student in the program receives a full tuition stipend for their BA, MA, and teaching certificate, as well as a relatively modest living stipend because of our financial constraints. But in general, the program is fully funded by our donors, and the cost of each student for a full 4 years of training is close to $100,000. So if you multiply that by the number of students in each cohort, we're talking about a program that is heavily funded by the support of our generous donors, and we are in need of funding in order to go forward. In other words, we have been very, very fortunate over the past 20 years to have wonderful support, and going forward, cohorts 21, which is opening this coming year, and those after that, we are looking to fund the program. And I'm sure, I think the original question came from Suzanne from the American Friends of the Hebrew University. I'm sure Suzanne will be happy to work together with anyone who's interested, and with the program, Suzanne and her colleagues all over the world, to make it possible for us to continue to train these outstanding students and who become outstanding teachers, to make it possible for the Hebrew University to continue to train our students. I think one of the special things in this program is that Revivim is really a bridge between the Hebrew University's the vast knowledge of the faculty members at the Hebrew University and the general public in Israel throughout the throughout the country, all over the country, in different kinds of schools, different kinds of secular schools, because our graduates are trained to teach in the secular school system and as opposed to the Orthodox school system. But they're in all kinds of different schools, schools for gifted students, schools for challenged students, schools in large cities, in the periphery, in moshavim and kibbutzim. We have graduates in all kinds of schools. And Revivim is really a bridge between the academic strength of the Hebrew University in the field of Jewish studies and in the field of education, a bridge towards the general Israeli public, which is really a wonderful thing. It's not just an ivory tower. The university is not just up there on Mount Scopus in the libraries. It's through the Revivim students, whatever goes on in the classrooms and whatever goes on in the libraries and the research is really brought to the public school system, which is one of the special things about this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chedva. And I think we have time for one last question for Shuvi. Hi. Arthur Elstein, he's asking, does the history curriculum include Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity?
Yes, it does. There's in the curriculum for history, there's a unit on Second Temple Judaism, and of course, everything that has to do with the beginning of Christianity. I think that that's actually going on what Chedva just said. I think that's one of the advantages of Revivim students who really come with a broad a sense of Jewish history and have come with a lot of knowledge. I think for some teachers in the system, they see in the curriculum that they're speaking about the Talmud and about maybe there's a little bit about early Christianity, and that's not necessarily the topic that they'll decide to delve into with the students. And I think from what I've seen and also from my own experience as a teacher, those are actually great opportunities to show the students just how complex and interesting identity is and the Jewish culture, how it really evolved in many different ways in different times in history. And it's a choice. I think that there are certain things that you need to teach for the curriculum. And there are certain things that you can decide to expand on. And I think for many, many times, it all depends on what knowledge you come with and what your academic background is. And if you're a person who's knowledgeable about these topics and you think it's interesting and you're enthusiastic about it, you'll bring more of that into the classroom, and you'll connect it also to more current contemporary issues of different religions and different beliefs and different cultures. So there is, again, there's a very basic unit on that time in history and about early Christianity, but I wouldn't say there's an extensive curriculum about Christianity. I mean, there is an extent actually in a program, like a part of the curriculum is also about Islam, which is very relevant, of course, in Israel, and it's part of the curriculum in history. But again, I think that those topics, it's exactly that. Those situations where I think the teacher shines and can really bring their own personality and their own interest, because if you're teaching about Christianity or Islam just because you have to, it's very different than if you have an appreciation for diverse cultures, or if you think it's important for your students to have some kind of a grasp on how Judaism really evolved and grew in relation to other cultures. So again, I think that's a big advantage for Revivim graduates who come with a really great foundation when it comes to humanities and history.
Thank you very much, Shuvi, and thank you, Chedva. I think our time is done, and thank you to all the participants for being with us. As I told you at the beginning, you will receive tomorrow the recordings and also with the next webinars for June. Hope to see you there, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.